Hey everyone, you like hearing the word no? Not a lot of people do, but here's the thing. You shouldn't stop at the word no because you're going to hear it more than you hear yes. Come inside this episode with David and I and you'll find out exactly what we're talking about. All right, you mentioned in the episode that there's a lot about purpose and about how, the importance of our purpose and how your uniqueness has a purpose.
Yeah.
Yet so many people out there listening to this podcast or walking the streets or maybe in business for themselves are confused as to what their true purpose might be. How does one find their purpose? Or is it something we don't find? We just eventually become aware of it and realize it's been here all along?
I shouldn't say this. I do think that there are some individuals that it's like, here's my purpose. Like I've known I wanted to be a piano player since I was 6 years old, and they're a singer and they're like Pavarotti or something. Like, yeah, okay, it happens on occasion. But for the average person, I think that it gets unveiled slowly because it's not something that's catered to as a child. Nobody recognizes their talent as a child for whatever reason, or it's discouraged or whatever. So, and I think that's the way that it was definitely for me. So I'm not even going to go down I was going to go down another rabbit hole, but I'm not going to go there. But here's what I wanted to say about this. So I think what happens is that we start to either we're interested in something, or we find out we're disenchanted with something and we start exploring. We find out we have an interest in something. I think we know we're in our purpose when we're doing that thing. We're in love with it. We get totally sucked in, and we feel fulfilled when we do it, or as we're mastering it, and we can't get enough of it. Right? It's almost like a drug. Like I think it does operate if I'm correct about this, it operates in the same center of the brain as addictive drugs do. It's just not dangerous for you, right? So, so we've called it, here's another word that I've used for it, a magnificent obsession. I think that kind of explains it. When you are magnificently obsessed with something, it's like, I absolutely love this. This is amazing. I want to know everything about it. I'll study everything about it. I'll learn everything about it. I'll go wherever I got to go. You can pretty much bet you are in your purpose. I think a person's purpose unfolds over time because it follows the laws of life. It becomes more magnificent. Sometimes T, I walk in the office, I see this amazing office that we have with all these amazing people, and I think back when I was in my 980 square foot house that I turned a bedroom into an office, and that's where I started the company. And now it's this, and it's getting bigger every day, and it's growing exponentially bigger every day. So it continues to grow. Like when I started, I never thought I would do a podcast. There were no podcasts when I started, right? It was something I decided that I wanted to try, and I love it. And the people that watch it, they love it. So I think it's that way with everybody. We find something and we start going down this road and we realize, oh shit, I really like this. I got a gift for this. I have a talent for this. I'm pretty good at this, and it just opens up that way.
Yeah. When you were first starting out, like even in outside of when you turned 21, you didn't foresee yourself speaking in front of thousands and having your own podcast or, right? So it developed over time.
I got scared. I honestly was scared in my early 20s. This started in my teenage years. I had a flashback when you were talking. I was sitting on my back porch with my girlfriend. I was 16 or 17 years old. She was 3 years older than me. She was asking me what I was going to do with my life. I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. But I remember telling her this. I said, this maybe really sound weird. I said, but I can't wait till I'm 40. And she was like, what? You can't wait till you're 40. You're 17 years old. You can't wait till you're 40. I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I have this weird feeling that I will be in my thing, doing my thing, and I won't have an issue with money like when I'm 40. And here's the thing. I started the company when I was 34. By the time I was 40, I was a multimillionaire. I was doing exactly what I loved. My career was I knew what my career was 100%. I was deep into it. Things were going great when I turned 40 years old.
So interesting. So like almost a premonition, if you will, just sitting there saying,
was.
what a random number to like pull out.
Right. Like who the hell wishes they were 40 when you're 17 years old? Like,
right. I wish I was 17 right now. That's where
I seriously wanted to skip all that time. I didn't care about my 20s. I didn't care about my 30s. I just wanted to get to 40 because I knew at 40 I would be deep in the shit, whatever it was. And it was kind of like there was also this other thing that I was too young yet to do the thing that I was ultimately going to do. And I didn't want to have to go through all the bullshit that you go through when you're young, Now, I do think, although I suppose everybody says this, but I do think that there's some truth to this. I think it was a little more difficult for us when we were younger. There weren't as many options as there are for kids today. And we were still going through, when you and I were in our 20s, it was still, you had to climb the ladder. You had to climb the social ladder. Like there was a lot of climbing that you had to do. A lot of paying dues, a lot of bullshit,
right.
Today you can get into success easier because kids can learn a lot quicker. They come to the table at 25 with a hell of a lot more knowledge than we had if they were actually playing their cards right? With us, we were very much trapped by the town that we grew up in and what we were exposed to. And it took a long time to break out of that and start to see something a little bit different. So I kind of, like it was a premonition. It was an inner knowing. And I still couldn't have told you at all what the hell I would have been doing when I was 40.
Right.
So,
and had you have skipped to your 40, it wouldn't have unfolded the way it unfolded. So that's kind of the cool part too. It's like on the job training, you had to go through the bullshit to get to the gold, which is where you arrived at.
And I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah,
I didn't know like everything that I was going to go through, all the hard times and stuff were 100% necessary for me to then become the business owner. Like I needed a lot of experience to be able to hit the ground running and then build this company the way that I built it.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you start talking about purpose because you feel like you don't really know, like when you're, out of high school or whatever, and you're trying to go to become what you want to be when you grow up, even I would say more often than not, we go into either what our parents did or what somebody in the family did. Or in my route, I went what I figured would provide me with the most security as far as financially and guaranteed a job out of school. Kids nowadays don't have that. Kids are leaving school. They're, in debt 6 figures. They're spending the first 10 years of their career paying it off. And they're not even in their purpose. That's the scary thing. So we could go down a, higher education rabbit hole about how it's not affordable for the majority of the people out there.
Well, that debt keeps them stuck in something that's not getting to them to their purpose.
Right.
They're stuck in a prison
right.
of having to pay debt off and try to figure out how to raise a family. The more and more people I come up against that I talk to that are suffering from this college debt thing, it's criminal. It's criminal what we're doing to these kids.
True.
Like it's
Yeah. I just think back to because I was a teacher, right? So I think back to the times when, okay, I got this degree and now I've got 35 years to the finish line. This is what I'm going to do. It didn't even cross my mind to go and do something. Even after the first year, Steph and I, we had recently started, hanging out and dating and whatnot. We were so negative and toxic about teaching. And that was our first year. The writing was on the wall. So if we needed a confirmation that we weren't in purpose, that was it. However, we continued to do it. I continued to do it for another decade beyond that first year, and I loved it and I was very good at it. But at the same time, there was some sort of a pull I would have thought that was pulling me away from it, but I never would have left on my own. This is truth. Had Steph not left before me and proved to me, I'd still be there. Yeah. And I would be miserable. I would be the most miserable son of a bitch around. Yeah. And it's just fascinating to me because when you start talking about, being restricted by what it is that's safe and comfortable, the real gift is when you get away from that and you start to be in a place where you're going to have difficult days, but it's not anything that you can't get through and you still love it. Like I still hit the front door here every day and there's hard days, but even so, it's a challenge and I look at it completely differently. Whereas as a teacher, there were days when I would sit in the parking lot and be like, Jesus, do I really have to go in and do this?
Oh, I get it. Yeah,
it's
I did the same thing.
Everybody does that, right? When you're not in your purpose. So I love that you talked about there is a uniqueness to that and everybody is, destined to do something that they love. And if you're not doing something that you love right now, you need to look in the mirror and say to yourself, well, what is it that I'm looking for? Because it's going to involve a decision that is going to take security maybe off the table, and that scares the shit out of people, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, they just can't take that first step. That's why I remember very early on going to some of when I was just a student of yours, going to events, and, someone would come up who's been in corporate for 10 years, but they really wanted to be an artist, and they really loved painting. And you would tell them to just go freaking do it. And you could hear an audible gasp in the crowd, because it's like, oh, how could you give away the security of this, even though that job they're in is going to kill them much sooner than watercolor paint would.
Yeah.
Right?
And when you were coming to my seminars, that's 10, 12 years ago at this point. 10, 12 years before that, I was sitting in Bob Proctor's seminars. And I would hear him say the same thing to people. People would stand up at the microphone and they would bitch about their life and their job. And he would say, then quit.
Right.
Just go home and quit. And I would sit there and go, fuck, like how the fuck can he say that to them? And I would know some of them. They would have a husband or a wife and kids and a career. And they would be absolutely miserable. And that was his answer every time. Just quit. Just go home and quit. And they'd be like, I can't. And he'd be like, yes, you can. If there's one thing that you have the ability to do is to choose what you do when you wake up tomorrow. Go home and quit. And it took me a long time to wrap my mind around it, because instantly I would go to this blank space. What would I do if I quit? Like we would all starve. Like we would go out, we would lose the house. We would be on the street. We'd have to move in with our parents. Like, what would we do? We couldn't do that. I had no idea how resourceful the human being was, not only to make it, but to make it way bigger than what we were playing safe for. When you would think about what we were doing back then. So,
yeah, well, I mean, what you're doing is, in those situations where someone is unhappy and they're being told to quit their job and go something else, you're basically betting on yourself. And when our sense of urgency is up, and when we bet on ourselves, you're not going to fail, because you're going to stop at nothing to see it through. And I think a lot of people in the audience, when they hear that gasp about, oh my God, how can he tell someone to quit? It's because they themselves don't have the courage to go out and do it, because maybe they like misery, or maybe they like safety, or whatever it might be. And it's a fascinating thing, because there's a lot of people out there listening who are not in purpose.
No.
There's a lot of people.
Most of them are not.
Yeah.
Most of them are not.
That's true. Well, you did say that every purpose has a consequence, meaning there is risk involved with everything that we do. When you know what you know, you go out and you live the way you want to live. Can you expand on that a little bit, about how every purpose has a consequence, good, bad, or indifferent?
Yeah. So you're making a different choice. You're going to go into something. You're going to live this purpose. One of the important things for a person to know about living their purpose is that it's very close to their heart, right? When you realize that you're doing the thing that you were put here to do, it's an intimate, emotional experience. It's a moment. There's no question about it. Now, think about when you were a kid and you had your favorite toy, or think about your child now, something that would crush you if you lost it. Your purpose is like that. It's that fragile. It's that intimate to you. The consequence is that when you first start it, you're generally going to have people push back. And if they don't push back in the beginning, at some point they're going to push back. You're going to get your haters. You're going to get your detractors that go along with it. A purpose, everybody's purpose, let's put it like this. Everybody's purpose is to somehow move us forward to some degree. Even if your purpose is, I'm coming up with the new spoon, right? It's all to move us forward to some degree. Now, when you think about that, you have to also consider that means change. It could be change for a few people. It could be change for a lot of people. Not everybody likes change. The people that don't like change, the people that are going to demonize change, people that are going to give evil or reprehensible meaning to your purpose, to your change, those are the people that are going to come out against you. The victims, the entitled ones, the people that come out against me are the ones that don't believe that you can change, don't believe anybody can change. They're angry at the world, so they're going to make me wrong because they're angry at the world. They maybe tried something and failed and then internalized it as they're a failure, so they're going to make me wrong. I don't really care what they say. I know they can do it. I help people do it all the time, but I also have to have, and I don't even call it a thick skin. It's understanding. Like, they're not really mad at me. They're not really mad at what I do. They're mad at the world that they've created for themselves that they can't get out of, and they don't want any reflections that they're wrong. And that's what it is. So we all have to bear the understanding of the consequence of the risk, of the audacity of what we're doing when we step out and do something else. The jealousy that people will have. Like, there's people that are jealous, it's just, and here's the thing. Jealousy is evil, jealousy is envy turned evil. Okay. Is what it really is. If you think about envy for a moment, what it really is you're recognizing something in something else or someone else that you really want yourself, but your low self-esteem tells you can't do it. Or you're using some reference from the past that says you can't do it. It gets really bad when it turns to jealousy, because now it makes it like, I can't be that. Someone else is better than me. Something else is better than me. I'm a piece of shit. That's what jealousy starts to do to you, right? You're taking something that is based in truth and you're turning it against yourself in a very twisted way. It's just a verification that you can. Yeah. You can do it. That's what, if you looked at things you're jealous or envious of, it's actually a verification that you can do it because you're resonating with that thing for some reason. If you understand how the laws work, if you understand how human potential works, psychology, emotions, the whole thing, you'd realize like, oh, I should be feeling inspired about this, not jealous. Because that is one of those external signs that's pointing to me saying, hey, over here, you're supposed to be doing this. You could be doing this. This is part of who you really are. People don't know that.
Yeah,
though.
which explains the jealousy trigger for sure.
It does.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well, this is a good transition into this question then, because I wanted to talk a little bit about opposition and the importance of not taking things personally, which is something you're very good at. So, but you weren't always that person. You weren't always that person who was able to water off a duck's back, so to speak. So how did you get to the place where you didn't have to defend, attack, or be right in those situations?
It was understanding. It was really learning about human dynamics. So my mentor turned me on to an author by the name of Vernon Howard. And it was, I learned a lot about this from my mentor and from various other people. Like, it wasn't just one person, but the person that the author that got me, I didn't know this person, he died before I was even aware of his work, was Vernon Howard. I learned so much from him specifically around the human condition, and that when somebody is attacking you or doing anything that you're taking personally, it has nothing to do with you. I didn't know that growing up, right? I lived in a household where everything offended my mother, right? You couldn't, the most innocent thing that you would do, she was offended and she was pissed and you did this to her and you did that to her. I thought that was real shit, I didn't know that my mother was so wounded on the outside. It's like, take a burn victim, the air offends them because it's so painful. Like, when somebody who's emotionally wounded like that, everything's very painful to them. But it has nothing to do with us. I didn't know that. But Vernon Howard, to answer your question, that's right. I studied Vernon Howard's work. I still do. I still teach some of his stuff too. His work really enlightened me on that. And then once I learned I learned it from a lot of other places in a lot of different ways that it was being taught. So everything's pattern recognition. So one of the things that I began to notice was, what are the patterns of somebody who kind of exemplifies this self-wounded behavior? And then all of a sudden you can start to see it a mile away. But you also recognize that it has nothing to do with you. If I say something, they're going to be offended. If you say something, they're going to be offended. If the guy down the street says something, they're going to be offended. If somebody charges them wrong by mistake, they're going to be offended. You did it on purpose. You were trying to get me. You're a crook. Like that's the way that these people see the world. And it's unfortunate, but what it does do is it gives the individual, us, an unbelievable sense of freedom. Because if you think about it, when you're raised in an environment where everybody is blaming you for the way that they feel, we start carrying this huge burden on our back. Like we don't want to step on toes. We don't want to make a mistake. Maybe you got hit when you were a kid or disciplined unfairly or whatever because somebody else's issues. You start to internalize it that it's your fault. When you break free of that, you're free. I mean, you're really free because now you're like, yes, I can be me and not give a fuck what anybody else thinks. The other thing is you stop attracting it in your life. I used to attract it in my life huge because I had this pattern of dealing with my mother this way. So with certain people in my life, I would attract the exact same kind of person. It didn't matter what I did. I could be doing something great from the bottom of my heart. They'd be offended by it. Once I became aware of that, it stopped. I stopped attracting it. I understood it. I was able to let a tremendous amount of emotional baggage for myself go. And yeah, like, well, you know me. I just don't get offended.
No,
like I don't.
And it's true freedom. It's the goal. Like it's my goal because I am susceptible to these types of taking things personally. But your Vernon Howard to me was Don Miguel Ruiz's Four Agreements. So I engaged in this. This is probably about 3 or 4 years ago as part of a challenge to myself was I read that chapter, Don't Take Things Personally, every single day for 3 months. And I read the same chapter and I would highlight and I would over highlight and I would just, by the time every single line in the chapter was highlighted and I would read it and then I would journal about it. And the awareness that comes from an activity like that was super powerful because like you said, it's just constant repetition over and over and over again. Now, my default still is to take things personally, but it's not as severe as it was before. It used to take me days, maybe even a week to get over something like that and just carry it with me.
And for a long time now, I've seen you stand up for yourself in situations where people would say something about you or accuse you and you'd be like, no, that's not true.
Right.
You're doing this. You've had too much to drink or, you're being an idiot.
Yes.
Like it has nothing to do with me.
True.
Own your own shit.
It's true.
Which is fantastic. Like it'd be great if everybody learns how to do that. But I've seen you stop it in its tracks and not tolerate it, which is kudos to your growth. It's been great.
Thank you. Yeah. And totally. I mean, and I am my worst critic. So when something comes up where I feel like I'm taking it personally and I do maybe fly off the handle a little bit, I am quick to be aware of it. And then I'm also quick to either apologize because I stepped out of line or be gentle with yourself. I think that's the big thing here. But honestly, when you talk about releasing the 800-pound gorilla that's on your back, I would say that taking things personally, if you can master that skill, even if you move the needle slightly, it becomes a lot less cumbersome back there.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
I mean, that's something to definitely shoot for. I think that would be a challenge for everyone in our audience out there who struggles with, taking things personally and getting frustrated and bringing in those jealous and envious sort of feelings. Life's too damn short to be carrying that stuff around with you.
Too short.
Absolutely.
You stop caring about what other people think and you free yourself up to understand how to manifest the amount of money that you need whenever you need it. You will be shocked at how free your life is. And here's another thing. You don't worry about anything anymore because what's there to worry about? Like most of our worries have to do with other people and it has to do with money.
Yeah. The amount of time we humans spend worrying about what other people think of us, when you release that, it is insane. When you release that, I mean, you're on the yellow brick road right there. It's golden. Yeah, I love that. Well, the title of this episode was Never Stop at No. So you talked about go beyond the no, especially when building a business. And you're going to hear no often. You hear no far more often than you do yes. So what kind of tools does a person listening need to use or utilize to ensure that those no's don't affect their successful mind? Because no's and rejection can really hurt a person and it can stop them dead in their tracks.
Yeah.
Do you have any tools or strategies to help with that?
Yeah, it can become completely paralyzing for an individual. So the very first one is to understand that a no or rejection has nothing to do with you. Even if you're asking somebody out on a date, it has nothing to do with you. And I know people say to me, what do you mean? It has everything to do with me. They said no to me. No, it doesn't. The no is the rejection of something inside themselves. Okay? It's being projected at you because you're reflecting something to them, but it is not about you. So number one, don't take it personally. And that's practice. You have to practice it. And I suggest that a person understands it also. Like study, read Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements. Go to anewlife.org and order some of Vernon Howard's work. Get his books. He has a little book of pamphlets. It's like 14 pamphlets. They're like 50 cents a piece. I think it's like, I don't know, $15 to order this book. And those pamphlets will help you. There's a lot of things that you can study. If you Google it, how not to take things personally, I'm sure there's a billion things that will come up under the Google search. There's things for free under Google you can study. It doesn't take much to learn how to do this, but you have to practice it, right? You have to practice. And then if you still feel hurt, you have to ask yourself, what do I need to heal inside of myself that's causing me to have that reaction? Because then it is about you. How you feel is about you. What happened is about them. So that's where you have to start with it.
Yeah, and the beauty in that is that you will get to practice it every single day of your life, because there will be someone around you that does something that the old you is gonna want to take it personally, and the new you has an opportunity to fix it right then and there. And you may fail, like I failed many times, and then 20 minutes later, there's another situation. So it's just like lifting weights.
When somebody does something that you're taking personally, one of the things that you could do is you could ask yourself, I wonder what this person's going through to make them react that way. So let's say somebody yells at you, or somebody misappropriates anger at you or energy or whatever it is. Ask yourself, I wonder what it is this person's going through to make them react that way.
Yeah.
You start with empathy. And it gets you thinking about how people will very often internalize something in their life, and then for whatever reason, they overreact and it comes out at somebody else. Again, but it's that part is understanding human nature. It's understanding that we're human beings. We don't always speak our mind. We often bottle things up and then it's projected out at somebody else. But if you understand that everybody does that to some degree, then when you experience it with someone else, you can detach a little bit and ask yourself a different question. Instead of asking a question like, what did I do wrong? What's the matter with me? Why doesn't this person like me? Why doesn't this person like my product? Am I going to make it? Like, we can go down a rabbit hole. Oh my God, the business is going to go under. I'm going to lose my house. My wife is going to leave me. The kids are going to hate. We can just tear the whole world down in our head if we go down that rabbit hole. If we ask a more intelligent question, it leads us down a different trail of causation. Maybe this person had a bad day. I wonder what's wrong with in this person's life. I feel bad that they're so emotional.
Yeah. Yeah, Steph was really good at this in helping me. And I feel like I've been talking about getting cut off in traffic a lot lately on these episodes.
And just so everybody knows, Steph is your wife. She's the CEO of our company.
Correct. Yes. So one of the things that Steph, the CEO, my boss and better half, she basically... When somebody would be in a rush, when people are driving crazy on the interstate and they're cutting you off, and then you kind of get in this little I'm going to go just as fast and not let him in. And then she reframed it for me in such a way where she said, what if that person, their daughter is sick or has been in an accident and he's trying to get to the hospital, or maybe she's pregnant in the back seat and is having a baby and they have to get, she was framing it in a positive way to kind of get me to think and realize, you're not in any sort of hurry. Slow down, let people go. That's their situation, not yours. And she also brought in the fact that there's this ripple in time that it's causing us to slow down because maybe there's something that would have happened had we stayed on this existing timeline. So it's a little ethereal, but it actually, in the moment, kind of calmed me down. And when I picture someone, like a dad rushing to the hospital to help his wife, be there for the birth of their child, it softens it quite a bit in the moment. Right. And I wasn't raging, because I could totally create a messed up situation in my head about all that son of a bitch. And then you get road rage and nobody wins in those situations.
Right. And here's the truth. probably extremely rarely is anybody doing that on the highway just because they want to piss you off, right? I mean, we've all rushed in the car because of an emergency or just being late and over dramatizing the consequence of it. And maybe we shouldn't have been. But everybody's having something go on in their day. So I agree with Steph with that.
Yeah.
Like you don't know what's going on in that person's life. And maybe they just lost their daughter and they're trying to get to the hospital, or maybe somebody's in distress in their family. But it's interesting that we'll do that. Like, oh, this guy's a jagoff. He's, he did that to me on purpose. He cut me off on purpose. And we make it all about us.
Right.
So,
it is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a conspiracy. Everybody's trying to keep me from getting home, 10 minutes earlier than I was supposed to.
And my dad said something to me one time that I was like, oh, shut up. This is what he said. He said, if you go 10 miles an hour faster, you get there 10 minutes early if you drive for an hour. Is it really worth 10 minutes if you get a ticket?
Oh, my God, right.
Is it really worth 10 minutes if somebody gets in an accident?
Oh.
What's 10 minutes really going to do for you?
What's 10 minutes?
And when he put it in that perspective to me, I was kind of like,
oh,
that's all it is 10 minutes.
Yeah, right, right.
Like I'm thinking I'm going to get there 45 minutes early.
Yeah.
It's like, no, he's right. It's only like an extra 10 minutes if you drive an hour. And you got to drive an hour to gain 10 minutes.
Right.
It's so.
That's cool. Well, as we wind down this episode, I just had a couple of callbacks for previous episodes that I wanted to share with our listeners. If you enjoyed this content, there's a couple episodes I want to spotlight. One of them we did not too long ago was called From the Top Down and From the Inside Out. And David goes into more of a discussion about the Kabbalion and the quote, as above, so below. So I think that would be one to go in and look, and definitely pick up a copy of the Kabbalion. It's an interesting read for sure. And then another one is episode 108, which was how to develop unshakable self-confidence. And I think that comes with understanding that the no has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the other person. And the yes is the next conversation or the conversation after that.
For
sure. So there is a way to develop unshakable self-confidence, episode 108. Any parting shots for our audience out there, David?
Don't take no for an answer. It's not the no that stops us. It's the agreement with the no that stops us. Your purpose is here. It's for you now. What you have to do is say yes to yourself and then say yes to the world and keep going. You don't need everybody to say yes in order for you to win big in life. You just need to ask enough times. That's it.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming inside, David.
Yep.
Hey, thanks for coming inside the episode. If you liked this one, make sure you go back and watch the content video that accompanies this. It's really eye-opening, and there's some good conversation that David has around the importance of the word no and how you're going to hear it more than you hear yes. Also, be sure and like and subscribe to this channel. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time.